Time for just a little bit of weathering. Hi, and welcome back to part number 7 of the Tamiya 1/48 scale F-51D, built as a P-51D in the Pacific. So last time I did the decals and a clear coat of semi-gloss. And the reason I did that is I like to do my weathering, and let me stress that this isn't necessary. Lots of people do things lots of different ways. That's why weathering is kind of something I don't generally like to get into too much, because there's a lot of methods and a lot of people like to do things different ways for different levels of weathering, etc. So I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do on this particular aircraft. And weathering can change from model to model. Sometimes I do a little bit more, sometimes I don't do any at all. But this one I'm going to do a little bit, and part of the reason I decided to do a little bit is because the decals gave me some trouble. And as is evidenced by this one here, it looks horrible and not very stoked with it. But as they say, to use a phrase that I really can't stand, it is what it is. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here, and yeah, it's quite easy actually, and I've actually already started a little bit. And let's hit the zoom here and see if we can even see a difference. So this one here I've already done. This one here has not been done. Now you can probably see a little bit of streaking and accentuated panel lines, rivets, etc. Now what I'm using for that is Ammo by Mig Jimenez panel line wash. This one is deep gray. Didn't want to use black, it's a little stark, and I'll probably do something a little bit different on the black painted areas, but we'll get to that later. This is an enamel wash, and I really like it for a number of reasons. Number one, it's pre-mixed and ready to go. You know, I have stuff that I can make my own washes, and I generally do, but I've really enjoyed this because it goes a long ways. It lasts a really long time, and it really works well. I like the way that it works, and I'll explain why. So by putting a clear coat on here, and you may get different results, you may not need to put a clear coat, but I put a clear coat on, and it helps with the cleanup a little bit. So basically I take this delineator, this liner brush. It's Select Artist Princeton brush. I got it at a local big box hobby retailer, and I like these long liner brushes because it holds more material. And I dip it in, and then I just touch it and let capillary action do its thing and just draw it through all the lines. I try and keep too much from touching the surface, but if it does, it's no big deal. Just like that. And as you can see, it flows really well down all these panel lines and around the detail. Now this is a pretty long stretch, so I'm going to have to touch it here. And it just runs through all the detail like that. Now for the rivets, I will simply run it across like that. Now see, one of the things that's nice about this stuff is it doesn't leave too much staining on the actual surface. But even at that, it's not that big a deal because it's easily taken care of. Now the nice thing about this stuff is even after it sits, even after it sits overnight, if you have a decent, or in my case, again, it's different strokes for different folks, by putting a clear coat on here, it's easy to remove any staining after the fact. So it can sit all night and still some of it wipe off, because there was some dark residual left right there. Just using this cotton bud, it just wiped right off. Now what I do is I need to let this sit for a little bit to dry up, because I don't want to hit it while it's still really wet. So I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes, and I'll come back and show you what's going to happen next. All right, let's take a look here. So you can see a little bit right there. Wipes right off. And again, by pulling it with the direction of airflow, if you do get any residual streaking, you can barely see, you might not be able to see it in the video. But it's going with the airflow, so it keeps it from looking weird. So I'm going to continue on with this on the rest of the airframe, then we'll come back. Okay, so I did this wing here. I did this wing and this wheel bay, this here, this stuff here. I did this wing to leave separate from that, so I can kind of demonstrate the difference in appearance between having it done and not done. Okay, this has been sitting for a while, so I'm going to show you what happens when you wipe it off. See, it doesn't, that's why I like this particular wash, is it doesn't permanently stain the paint around it, at least with a semi-gloss or gloss. Gloss isn't that great for doing this kind of stuff. It's too slick, in my experience, however limited that might be. See, it just wipes off really well. It leaves just enough streaking and discoloration to make it interesting. Okay, so I don't know how much you can really tell between the two sides on the camera, but from here it's looking pretty good. So I am going to go ahead and continue on, as I said earlier, with the rest of the airframe, and come back once I have all this done. All right, so here it is with that done. So the next thing I need to do is I want to do a bit of a dirty wash on these wheels, these tires. But I'm not going to get all really grody, dirty, messy. So let me get my, I think I will use, well, I think I'll use my Ultimate Modeling Products Light Dirt Wash. And the reason I'm using that is because it dries fairly quickly, and it'll give the effect that I'm after. So it's a clay wash, and I have certain brushes that I use just for this, and basically just put it on here thusly, all the way down to the hub, making sure that I get it in the tread really well. Like that. Now keep in mind, my objective with this aircraft is not to do a really dirty, war-weary bird, okay? It's not my objective, so I'm being kind of restrained with my weathering. So I'm going to do this wheel and the tail wheel. And then, after it dries, and you can tell when it's dry because it'll be real dusty looking like this, I'm just going to take a cotton swab, Q-tip, cotton bud, etc., and wipe it down. And what that's going to do is on the smooth sidewalls and on the tread, it's going to give it kind of a dusty, a little bit dusty appearance, but leave the dust deposited in the actual recessed part of the tread. Now, I totally forgot, but this may disappear whenever I spray my flat coat on. I knew there was a reason I was waiting. Because when you spray stuff on top of this is usually something you should do last. But if it does, it's no big deal because all I got to do is just reapply it. It'll not be a big deal. But there it is. Real quick. Way to dust up the rubber portion of the wheels. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to dirty up this. I know at the beginning of this whole build I was going to do no weathering, but I just can't help myself. Especially with the decals turning out like it did. Maybe they'll blend in a little bit better with a little bit of messiness. But I'm using my Abteilung light mud, and I've already put the dark mud, just dots of it. And we'll see how it turns out. Put that on there, and then I'm going to take my brush here that I use for doing this kind of stuff. See if I can get it. Yeah, whoops. And basically I'm just gonna start working it in like this. Just trying to get it at a dirty appearance. Just totally randomly making it. See, that's not much work at all. Now, I could be better, I guess, but that actually turned out pretty well. I'm stoked. I am stoked with that. Wow. Pretty groovy. And see how quick that was? Super simple. The best part is if you don't like it, just take some mineral spirits and just wipe it completely off. So there's that. I'm going to do a little bit on this side, not as much because that doesn't get as much traffic. So, and that's one nice thing about this metal finish. This kind of stuff shows up really well. Same thing. Just really splotching it around so it doesn't come out as a tinted area, but a splotchy, dirty, messy area. Use the residual around the gun access. I don't know how much you can see of that, but it's more subtle than the other. So there we go. That looks pretty cool. I'm stoked with that. So once that dries out really good, then I can spray a flat coat on it. But before I do that, I need to glue all these other parts on. I also need to paint these last two parts here, but I'll do that once I get them in place. The pitot tube and the radio mast. Those will be the very last things because, you know, I have a tendency to break those off if I'm not careful. So let's see, what shall we do first? Let's do the landing gear doors. Whoops. Okay. This one goes here. Okay, so I need to okay, the gear door goes here, and this goes here, like that. So let me monkey around with it, see how I'm going to do this. Okay, the gear doors are installed, the pitot tube is installed, and the radio mast. So I'm going to let that dry, and once that's dry, before I install the landing gear, I am going to spray a flat on here just to kind of further blend the decals and the paint together. Now I may do a semi-gloss. Matter of fact, I think I am going to do a semi-gloss. I'm going to do a semi-gloss, and because I also need to make sure the decals are blended in well on the prop. So let that dry for a little bit. Real quick before I forget, I need to install the headlight. Actually, it's a landing light, I guess. Gotta install that right there. So I'm going to do that, let it dry, and then spray final semi-gloss on here, and then I can put these last parts on, and it'll be good to go. Alright, the last two things I need to do is put some exhaust staining on it and glue the landing gear in place. So I think I'll start with the landing gear. Hope I don't regret it. looks like a pretty positive connection there. So I'll get some, what do I want to use? I think I'm going to use some thick CA. Ooh. That's a bit much. Let's put that in there. That looks pretty good. Better be, because it's dry. All right, just fit this one. Yeah, that looks good. Same thing. Hopefully I'm not getting my head in the way. And now I'm really trying to make sure that these are equidistant from each other and everything. Not that that matters, because, you know, hey, if you have crooked landing gear or stuff like that, no big deal. All right, so there's that. So I'm going to let that set up good, because I do not want those popping loose. In the meantime, I'll get out the stuff I'm going to use to do my exhaust staining. Okay, so for my exhaust stains, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate it because I kind of do it in my lap, but I'm using the Tamiya Weathering Master Set B, which is snow, which I don't know if I've ever used, soot, and rust. Obviously, I'm using soot in this one. I'm just using, you can use the applicator that comes with it, but I've got these applicators here that I got from the makeup section at the drugstore, or druggist, or chemist, or whatever you call them. And just streaking it back, and I'm just doing it according to the photos I've seen. And they don't, I mean, they run the gamut. I mean, some of them have just a big old black filthy thing going along. Some of them are like almost a blue metal staining. Some of them are kind of come out and then whip up. Some of them just come straight back. Some of them come, it's just, so this is the one I'm using. And then I can use the brush to kind of blend it in so there's not any sharp edges. But just like that, not very difficult. I've done it with an airbrush before and had good results, or very good results with that. But in this case, I opted to do this instead, just because of the amount of staining I'm doing. So you just drag it back like that. I can do it on the camera. Now this is where a flat finish is really helpful. Like that. That's that's looking pretty good. All right, so there it is. So with that, my friends, this thing is done. So let me get a slideshow ready to go, and we'll take a look at the finished product. So here is the finished kit. This is the Tamiya 1/48 scale F-51D done as the P-51D Bad Angel. So the kit itself, really nice kit. It's from 95, if I remember correctly. It was first molded in 95. This particular boxing of it was 96 to make it the F-51 as opposed to the P-51. So it was a really, really nice kit. Enjoyed building it. Pretty simple. Don't have a lot of weird options that you have to decide between other than the canopy and the prop blades, depending on which version you're doing. So yeah, would I recommend it? Definitely. Would I recommend it to a beginner? Yeah, I think this is something a beginner could easily build, because everything fits together really well. There's not an overabundance of parts and small details like in the cockpit or anything like that, so it just works out really well. So the decals all worked pretty well except for these large ones, and I had a real problem with them wrinkling up, but in the end I was able to get them mostly okay. Not too dissatisfied with the decals, and overall I really like how it turned out. Is it my best work? Nah, probably not, but ran into a few snags with the aforementioned decals and some paint lift and stuff like that, but I enjoyed it, and I do like the finished product, and I do like the subject because, as I mentioned in the earlier videos, the story behind Bad Angel is really, really interesting. So that concludes this one here. So I'm going to add a slideshow after I'm done blabbing that you can peruse if you like. And I hope you enjoyed following along on this series. If you did, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, maybe subscribe if you'd like to see the rest of the build or some of my other builds. So again, thank you for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude in the Tamiya 1/48 scale F-51D. And as always, I will see you all later.